Well, welcome everyone. My name is Pat Porchot. I'm president of the AWL Board of Directors, and we're excited to see so many people here today as we broadcast live to other parts of the country, and we're especially grateful so many people around the country have tuned in here today to help us advance the goals of the Alaska Wilderness League to protect Alaska's wildlands and wildlife, and to help us honor a few friends at this time too. I want to start with a land acknowledgement that we stand on the lands of the coastal Salish peoples whose ancestors have resided here since time immemorial, and many indigenous people still thrive in the area today. Just to give you an advance on the program, in a few moments we're going to hear from our executive director, Peter Windsor, and he's going to share some of the important work that we've been doing in the protection of Alaska's wild lands, including work on the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, Western Alaska, and the Tongass Forest, among other things. And then you'll hear from Kristen Miller, our conservation director, who's going to help present the Voice of the Wild Award that we had been doing annually. We have not done that since 2018, and we're very happy to present that award to Patagonia. And we have one of our friends, Whitney Clapper, with us today, who's Patagonia's head of community impact and partnerships, to accept the award. Later, Ellen Ferguson, who you just saw, and Laura Kolton will announce the first annual recipient of the Adam Kolton's Alaska Storytelling Grant Award. It's a new initiative that we unveiled here last year at the very event in honor of our late director, Adam Kolton. And finally, I want to express how appreciative we are to all of you and all of you online who've really supported our work at Alaska Wilderness League, and in trying to protect some of the wild places and the wild things that you witnessed on the short video. So let me now first introduce our executive director, Peter Windsor.
Thank you, Pat. Great to see some very familiar faces here today and some new ones. I see some people here like George Devoki, who I met a long time ago up in the Arctic Ocean trying to cross the Arctic on an icebreaker. And I see some new faces, and I'm delighted to be here. This is supposed to be a very positive event and a friendly evening, and I hope we can keep it there. I am going to make a word of things like climate change, which can easily bring you down in a negative doom and gloom spiral in a hurry. But really, we're here to celebrate all the good work we do at AWL and also honor the memory of Adam Kolton, whose shoes I cannot ever fill, but I'm happy to try to continue the pathway in the direction that Adam started with AWL, and I hope I can keep on in that trajectory into the future. So thank you for coming tonight. I think it's one of the more amazing places we can work on is Alaska and the wild Arctic. I grew up in Sweden, or I usually joke that you can tell from my accent that I'm from Texas, but people usually don't buy that very quickly. I grew up in a pretty underrepresented family in Sweden, and I quickly found my escape in going outdoors and climbing trees and taking photos of owls. And that's basically how I got interested in nature to find an escape. And I grew up by a small salmon river in Sweden and started to fish. And then I got into climbing, which brought me to northern Norway and ice climbing. And I started to get interested in sea ice and anything of that kind. And eventually, after being a high school dropout, I started a career as an oceanography professor and got over to the US about 20 years ago. And I've been up in Fairbanks, Alaska for the last 15 years, and I call that home. If you ever lived in Fairbanks or been there, you know, if you stay longer than a year, you're a sourdough. If you stay longer than a decade, there's probably something really wrong with you. And I've been there for 15 years, so here we are. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit more seriously about what we're doing at Alaska Wilderness League. Most of you are very familiar with our work, but there's new things and new threats popping up in Alaska, and sometimes I feel like we're playing whack-a-mole, but we're definitely being more strategic than that in our work. And we work on a number of issues, the Refuge, the Reserve, Tongass, but we also get involved and support coalitions about Eisenbeck Road, Ambler Road, Bristol Bay, whatever is out there that needs our attention. AWL is always there and forming coalitions, partnerships, and being a good partner to the environmental community while supporting our administration and trying to convince our decision leaders to do the right thing in this space. So I spent a lot of time up in the Arctic. I crossed the Arctic 3 times on an icebreaker. I've been to the North Pole many times. I worked in Antarctica too, our other pole, and there's a third pole, which is the Himalayas, that people rarely talk about, but that's going to be extremely important for humanity as climate change is imprinting on Earth. But sticking to the Arctic, I met polar bears a lot of times, and we're used to these beautiful images of polar bears, and I've never seen polar bears like this in the field. Polar bears are usually very yellow, dirty. Typically, you run into young males who are starving or very hungry, and they just want to eat you or your boat or your rope or anything that's anywhere near you. So even though we love these iconic images of polar bears, the reality today up in the Arctic is more like this. This is an image from when we were up in northern Greenland working with the local hunters who still use dog sleds to go hunting, and they're basically trying to dog sled across an ocean. There's landfast ice underneath them here, and it's basically been melted by an enormous heat wave that occurred that year and basically melted very rapidly in an order of a week, all the snow and ice around them. So this is the new reality in the Arctic. This makes obviously for unsafe conditions for people to hunt and gather and remain in their traditional lifestyle up there, and it has a number of more serious implications. And I think it's just one of those images that sticks to my brain when I see it, and I try to show it as often as I can. Being an oceanographer, climate scientist, I have to have one science slide, otherwise I would be dispelled from being a tenured professor at some point. And you see a lot of these, and people look at them and they're like, oh, that's a lot of red on there, they're surely not good. And it's more than surely not good. These are seasonal mean temperature changes over the last 30 years or so over Alaska. And anywhere here that looks blushingly red or very dark is 6 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it should be. And 6 to 10 for some people is like, well, they increased my parking lot, charge for that by 6. It surely isn't that bad. For Alaska, for being 6 to 10 degrees warmer at any season, especially if winter, fall, and spring is really bad news. Alaska is warming up about 4 times faster than anywhere else in the world. Northern Alaska is really the epicenter of climate change effects in the world right now. And that's the very area where we as an organization focus on Northern Alaska, Middle Alaska, and all the way down to the Tongass National Forest. And if you didn't need any more inspiration to work on this, this is really something that reverberates and resonates through all the work we do. And climate change is one of those things that it's the new, I usually call it the new moonshot for the world and for the US. We used to aim for the moon in this country. On my very birthday in '69, we landed on the moon. I think climate change is the new moonshot for us as humanity. And that's really where we need to put all our eggs in that basket. With that comes implications for biodiversity, for species, for indigenous people that lived here for thousands of years. And all of those are integrated into the work we do at AWL on a daily basis. Here we are. We have a new strategic plan. I've been in this role now for 6-7 months. Please bear with us as we navigate this landscape and find our way. But as I said, Adam Kolton before me and others before him have really done this work for a long, long time. And I think we're sticking to our guns, and we have a new strategic plan where we really try to focus our work. There's so much going on in Alaska that we don't always have the bandwidth to deal with everything on a daily basis. So instead of being the leader in everything, we try to be a leader as an organization in a few critical points, and then we're a really good partner and a networker and an amplifier for other issues with our NGO environmental community, with our governments, with the Department of Interior, Bureau of Land Management, and the whole cascade from grassroots, indigenous people to grass tops. And I'm a very grassroots kind of person, and I live in Fairbanks, and I meet with grassroots organizations on a daily basis and have coffee up there. And just as a reminder, without grassroots, you will never have grass tops. And that's, I think it's the new way that we want to go in conservation in overall. I want to speak a little bit about the Wildlife Refuge. This is sort of in the DNA of Alaska Wilderness League. It's something that's a well-known entity actually across the US. A lot of Alaska issues aren't necessarily well-known or well-addressed in the US, but the Refuge is one of those iconic places with a strong DNA that when I go to DC and we talk to senators or the House or decision makers or anywhere, everyone has heard of the Refuge. The problem is here we are 40 years later into this fight, and we're still in the fight for the Refuge. And as you know, we were very close to having a bill introduced in the Build Back Better bill, which was then the IRA bill, and we just didn't get there because of political complications. So now we're on the pathway with the Refuge where we're really looking to the biodiversity values of the Refuge, and we're talking with our partners. We have very strong partners in the Gwich'in people. We have Judy Potts on our board, who's a Han Gwich'in. We work with Bernadette, who's the Gwich'in Council. Basically speaks for the Gwich'in Nation. And with these partnerships, we're now advancing a different approach to getting to the end goal, which is long-term protections for the Refuge, which is insensitive ideally to administration changes, and we have protections that will be long-lasting over many decades into the future, so we can let wildlife and people have the ability, the right to roam and the room to roam, have elbow room to really build resilience to climate change without the added stresses of industrial pressure. So we are doing a very strong in the Arctic Refuge Defense Campaign. We have a very strong corporate campaign where we basically got every US bank to back off from funding development in the refuge. We are almost there with all the insurance companies, and this track has proven very efficient for us. So we're doubling down on this work from now into the end of the Biden administration, where we're hoping that we can have a lease sale in the refuge. And it's weird to say as an environmentalist, but we want to have a lease sale in the refuge that's absolutely torturous and no one wants to bid on it. And we can have that completed under the Biden administration. And that's really the best strategy we have now for the refuge. And our team and our staff is doing amazing work in this regard. Moving over to the National Petroleum Reserve of Alaska, a name I personally don't like at all, and I wish we could name it something completely different, because this, in my mind, especially looking into this as a former European, it sounds like, oh, you have this beautiful land set aside as a reserve for us to pull out oil and gas at any time we need it. That's not the purpose of the NPRA. The NPRA is the highest biodiversity value anywhere on Earth, and it's anywhere across the entire Panarctic region. There's no region that has more biodiversity than the NPRA area, which is just amazing that in 2022, we're still standing here discussing with the Biden administration if we should drill and develop oil for the next 30 years or so. Absolutely amazing. I've been up a lot in the NPRA. I used to work in the coastal communities along Alaska as a scientist, and this is truly a remarkable place. And the people who live here are dealing with not only the pressure from climate change on a daily basis, but they're also dealing with the effects of development, new roads, gravel pads, drilling pads, linear infrastructure that's really making a big impact on, say, caribou migration, which food source they rely on. So it's impacting people's food security, their way of life, their cultural identities. It goes a lot deeper than climate pressure alone. And we study these ecosystems and the people that live in them, and we understand that if we leave, climate change is an enormous stressor. If we add industrial pressure on top of that, a lot of these ecosystems will probably come to a tipping point where they will collapse, and they are irreversible on timescales of 100 or several more years. So we're dealing with something that's extremely important, and we're right at these tipping points right now. So the next 10 years or so will really define what we can do in these landscapes, and that's why we're so focused on the National Reserve and the refuge in concert, ideally. So here's a map of some of the things that's going on up here. In the upper corner here, you can see that we have the village on Wixit, and ConocoPhillips has a big project plan there that we've gone through an SEIS that's called the Willow Project. The Willow Project will basically reverse all of the advances that the Biden administration has had in terms of emission scenario in one single development project. Willow is also just the starting hub for industry to advance westward into the Western Arctic, into areas that all the science community has identified as critical habitat and biodiversity hotspots. So this is the fight we're fighting. We're in the refuge, trying to stop any oil exploration to ever happen there and making the lease sales completely untangible for industry. And we're in the reserve trying to stop the Willow Project and westward migration of industrial development. And we're doing that. This is what, if you haven't been up there, there's already a lot of infrastructure, and there's a lot of oils being pumped into the pipeline. So what we're doing as the latest thing we've done at AWL is that we had a very strong campaign called Stop Willow, where we had a public comment period. We had over 250,000 comments submitted to the Bureau of Land Management to say we don't want this to happen. We had 161 partner organizations sign letters, and we're putting a lot of pressure on the administration, ideally to never go forward with the Willow Project. So that's where we are today, and I'm very proud of our organization and how strong we've been. We're strong together too. We're a community of organizations. We work with the Wilderness Society, Sierra Club, Audubon, indigenous communities, organizations, and really together we're much stronger than one alone. And that's the partnerships that I hope to build into the future with AWL as well. So lastly, today you're here. Like I said, I see some familiar faces and I see some new faces, and I'm really asking you to think how you can help us do this meaningful work up in the Arctic. And every contribution you potentially make today will go to the Adam Kolton Memorial Fund, which indirectly, or directly, I should say, will support AWL's work in the Arctic through the storytelling grant, which you'll hear more about soon, to all the branches we do in the legislative work, with the litigation work we do with our partners, NGO partners, and all the way to our indigenous partners up in Northern Alaska, where I live on a daily basis in Fairbanks. So thank you so much. I hope you will enjoy this evening and that you will consider contributing to this memorial fund, both in the memory of Adam and for all the work that we do in Alaska. Thank you very much. And with that, I want to tee up Kristen Miller, who's our conservation director, who many of you know, who is going to talk about the voice of the wild world. Kristen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen Miller. I am the Conservation Director at Alaska Wilderness League, as you just heard. And I am very happy to be here tonight to present this year's Voice of the Wild Award to our good friends at Patagonia. In the 16 years that I've been with the League, by far one of my favorite parts of our work has been bringing partners to the fight to protect Alaska's wild places. These are relationships that are pivotal to our work, and they ensure that the right voices are being heard by the right people to protect the wild places of Alaska. Over the League's nearly 30-year history, few partners have been as long-standing, dedicated, and fun as our friends at Patagonia. I looked back and I was reminded that my personal beginnings with Patagonia at the League went all the way back to 2007 when we worked together, the League and Patagonia, on what I think was their first catalog dedicated to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. So the League worked with them, we helped them get the photos, and I helped secure an essay by Senator Tom Udall about the history of the fight to protect the Arctic Refuge. That was 15 years ago, and here we are, still in the fight together today. Since those beginnings, Patagonia has been with us throughout the Obama administration as we worked to secure national monument designation for the refuge, as we held the line against the Trump administration so that no seismic testing, no drill rigs, no industrialization whatsoever tarnished the refuge coastal plain. And they're still with us in it today, forging a path forward with the Biden administration. In all of that time, Patagonia has used their platform to fight for the land and also for the people who have lived on the land since time immemorial. We have been really thankful for Patagonia's dedication to uplifting the Gwich'in people in their catalog through beautiful film pieces, and we're going to see one of those right after I speak, and in so many other ways. With their support over all of this time, the Arctic Refuge remains the sacred place where life begins. So needless to say, Patagonia's relationship with Alaska Wilderness League runs deep. Their partnership means so much to us because they are a major international brand that has humbly learned about and contributed to what our organization does, and because the staff that do the work are some of our favorite people in the conservation movement. At this point, they can't shake us. We are on calls with them all the time. And so I did want to just give a quick shout out to a few folks. Well, first, Ron Hunter, who brought us together. He is retired from Patagonia. And then just quickly, I want to say thank you to Megan, Keith, Hans, Whitney, and then also to Tommy and Claire. So these are the folks we work with so much, and these are some of the best staff and athletes that you will find doing this work. So we're so lucky to get to work with them. We work this on a number of issues. Patagonia's efforts don't stop by any means with the Arctic Refuge. Just in Alaska, they've told the story of New Talk with a powerful film highlighting this coastal community's challenge of being upended due to climate change. They've fought for the giant trees of the Tongass. They've pushed back against the climate-damaging Willow Project in the Western Arctic. And that's just in Alaska. The list goes on. I think I've heard that there's also conservation issues in the lower 48. Patagonia's contributions to the betterment of our environment, to our nation's climate fight, is without bounds. It is not an overstatement to say that Patagonia and its founder, Yvon Chouinard, have shaped the outdoor industry and the world for the better. Along with all of their strong campaign support, their financial support to us and to so many others in the fight goes back decades, and their continued fiscal commitment to protecting our world's climate is all the more evident as company leadership shifts and new climate-focused entities are created. So, simply put, all in all, I am thrilled to present the 2022 Voice of the Wild Award this evening to Patagonia, and we're going to show a video, and then I'm going to welcome to the stage our good friend, Whitney Clapper.
The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is sacred lands to the Gwich'in, known to my people as Jikwatsan Gondai Godlit, the sacred place where life begins. For over 40,000 years, we migrated with the porcupine caribou herd. All our songs, all our stories, all our dances are directed to them. We are caribou people. We carry a piece of the caribou in our heart, and the caribou carry a piece of us in their heart. Oil and gas activities on the coastal plain is a direct attack on the Gwich'in way of life and our human rights. So the most important part is the calving grounds up here, right on the coast, and that's where they want to drill. For over 30 years, they've been trying to open the Arctic Refuge for oil and gas development in the calving grounds of the porcupine caribou herd. The Gwich'in Steering Committee was founded in 1988 by the elders and chiefs of the Gwich'in Nation. This is our traditional chief, Trumbull Gilbert, and our mission is to protect the porcupine caribou herd from oil and gas development. We're taking a stand and we're taking back our home. So, ready for the fight because we're not gonna give up.
Thanks, Kristen. There's so many stories I could share about you too. Hey everyone, it's nice to see you all. I mean, just take a deep breath, right? This is why you've been here. The previous video, the Gwich'in and Inupiat, these beautiful places. And as long as Gwich'in and Inupiat will have us, we're not leaving either. It's an honor to be here with you all tonight. My name is Whitney Connor Clapper. I've been with Patagonia for a while now, she, her pronouns, and I am coming up from the community of the Chumash people down in California, where our headquarters are in Ventura, California. I'm honored to be here. We are so honored for this award. There's so much to say, and I can already feel myself getting emotional because there's just a lot more to do. But we're so happy that you all chose to honor Patagonia. But really, more importantly, we're so grateful for the work that you all have done and continue to do. Like I said, we're not abandoning that as long as we're invited by the communities there. As previous speakers have said, 2 decades we've been involved. Mr. John Sterling, looking back at the history, was one of the first people to administer the first grant in 2001. You can take it up with him why he didn't do it before that time, but 2001 was when we administered the first grant. In total, we've given 31 different grants over the couple of decades, resulting in $750,000, give or take. I also was looking at the history of granting the Gwich'in Steering Committee, and that also started pretty early on. In 2003 was the first time we gave a grant there, and we've been pretty consistent with that as well, resulting in a little over $250,000. So between the two, we're doing okay with about $1 million, and that doesn't include the rest of the Arctic Coalition organizations that we also grant. So we're committed. I know ideally Yvonne Chenard was going to be here. I'm about the same height. We also have Yvonne Besfold here. So together, I hope we can represent for you all. I did the same thing, Peter. Wrong way. I'm going to walk you down a little pathway of my life and dealing with communities and work in the Arctic Refuge. I picked some highlights because I figured we wanted to keep it on a happy note tonight. We can get into climate change later. I first got involved back in 2015 when I started at Patagonia. We'd never had a brand team, so I helped start the brand marketing team, which was responsible for that. Ron Hunter, as we heard, was my steadfast partner on the Enviro side. He looked after a lot of the kind of DC-based, often white-led organizations, and my heart as being a sociologist and biologist really wanted to go deep into the people of the communities and the places we had been working in. So that's how Ron and I kind of took this together. I got to really know the people and continue to get to know the people of this community. So here I am with Bernadette at a Gwich'in gathering, and the connections continue over the years. As a result of that, I soon began a friendship with Bernadette as well as Princess, and Kristen called out the Refuge film. This is one of the shots from the production of the Refuge film in early 2015. And really, so many things that I could say about this production. I'd say the one thing that really stuck with me was Bernadette and Princess as moms talking about the calving grounds and the birthing grounds and the importance of these sacred places. And as a then new mom, hearing about this place in that mindset and that framing really, really hit me. I had a son that was about a year old at that point, and recognizing the importance of a birthing ground, it was then that really that kind of cemented that commitment for me. And I recognized also at that point that whether you're a mom, you're a parent of a two-legged or four, because I know there's dedicated pet owners out there, I know that there's really, wait for it, there's really nothing that we wouldn't do for our homes, our lands, our waters, our kids, our kin. In tandem with the production of this Refuge, the first film we worked on, because there have been several, Ron and I also worked pretty diligently with a lot of you really in the room, as well as Cindy Shogun at that point, to organize a fly-in, as well as to organize a screening of the Refuge at the Museum of the American Indian. So apparently, AWL only likes to show up in museums outside of lobbies, but I like that. It's a beautiful way to honor people. So here we were in DC. Lorraine was also on the trip with Bernadette. We had a great day of lobbying, and then we invited senators and congressional staff to the museum. We hired a bluegrass band, which was as close to Gwich'in fiddling as I could get in DC, and we partied. We had a really incredible event. The following year, I attended a Gwich'in gathering, and really was in awe. I was telling Jody last night, I've had a moment that I experienced at that Gwich'in gathering that has stuck with me, because I believe it's actually a climate solution. And that was really being a witness to what it looks like to be a deep and active listener. And I saw very charged Gwich'in members come into this gathering. Clearly there was conflict. Clearly there had been some historical trauma. I wasn't privy to all of that, but you could feel it. And the way these Gwich'in members held space for one another, the way they listened to one another, the way they were able to really show up with such grace just to be in that same room with one another was such an incredible effect on me that I really, if I could transfer that moment and have you all witness that, I mean, to me, that's what's needed as we continue all of these fights, that deep listening to one another. Later on, as Kristen mentioned, a couple years later, Bernadette texted to see if I could attend the climate summit that was happening in Arctic Village. At the same time, Adam called and said, hey, we want to send some people up on a trip. Who have you got? At the same time, Andy called. I mean, I don't know if that was like a tactic for Patagonia, but I think it was daily. There was a call of like, who you got? We need to send people. And we thought, at that point, our ambassadors were really becoming more involved in advocacy and really using their voice. And I quickly texted Tommy Caldwell, who's one of our pretty incredible climbers, and said, hey, how does it sound to go to the Arctic? Any desire? And he, being an adventurer, could find any sort of adventure. I mean, obviously there's plenty of adventure out there, but climbing, he thought, yeah, the Brooks Range, I'm going to do that. And then I want to go to this gathering. He also then called two of our running athletes, Claire Gallagher and Luke Nelson. And all of a sudden, with thanks to a lot of people in this room who played kind of travel agent, we had 3 athletes attend this climate summit and then experience the Refuge. I actually texted Tommy, Claire, and Luke to get some photos for this, and they are geared up to go again. So, Yvonne, we might be putting some budget requests in our Patagonia budget, but they're so excited, and they are absolutely engaged and want to continue with this fight. So, in addition to growing this army of advocates, I'll say that Claire Gallagher was meant to run one of the biggest races that she's run in her past, the Western States, which is a pretty brutal and gnarly 100-mile race. And she was meant to run that a week after getting back from the Arctic. And I'd like to report that she came in first, holding the second fastest time of that race course, all thanks to being in the Arctic. And so, of course, there's a lot of media articles about this. We're going to come out with a training guide for athletes. You have to go to the Arctic first. But in one of her media reports, she said, I learned from the Gwich'in people, the hunters of caribou, while adventuring with other Patagonia ambassadors to bring awareness to the fragility of the region in wake of proposed oil drilling. And she said that as she ran, this is what fueled, bad choice of words, this is what propelled her forward throughout her race, was just having been here and experiencing this. This is what kept her going. So, training manuals to come. So there's so many more stories, but I don't need to take up any more time. I'm going to close out with a drone shot of Arctic Village that our friend Carrie Oberly took. And just want to say, while you admire this, we so appreciate the work that you all are doing to keep the pressure on the banks to stop them from financing drilling the Arctic. Patagonia is also grateful to work with you to protect the world's largest sockeye salmon fishery in Bristol Bay, as well as protect places like Tongass National Forest, in addition to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And as I said earlier, as long as the Gwich'in and Inupiat will continue to have us, we'll remain committed indefinitely. So I'm going to close with a few words from Yvonne Chenard. This is a nice award, but I'm much more grateful for the work you do. If we can't protect the Arctic and Alaska's wilderness, we don't stand a chance. So thank you, AWL, and thank you all.
Oh, congratulations, Patagonia and Whitney. Thank you so much for your wonderful remarks and the inspiring photos. We cannot get enough inspiring photos of the Arctic. Greetings all. It's great to see you, all of you in the room here at the Burke Museum in Seattle, as well as people across the land and on Zoom. So great to see you. I have the honor, Ellen Ferguson here, longtime association with the Burke Museum, proud, longtime board member of the Alaska Wilderness League. and member of the awards committee, the Adam Kolton Alaska Storytelling Grant Award, our new award that we are announcing, our second award of the evening following Patagonia. So I have the pleasure of teeing this up, and then I'm going to hand it over to the fabulous Laura Kolton. This is really a touching moment. Many of us were here a year ago for our annual event, which really became something of a more memorial tribute to our beloved Adam Kolton, who died very prematurely and tragically April of 2021. So we're now here a year later, and many of you and others across the country were so generous in their memorial tributes that it has enabled us to found a new award, the Adam Kolton Storytelling Award. And if any of you knew Adam, which I know many of you did, you will know in part why we chose this award out of a number of possibilities. Both Adam honored and treasured the storytelling, particularly of Indigenous peoples in Alaska, and he was also himself a damn good storyteller. We've all enjoyed those stories. See where we are here. So this is a new award for the league, and a newish one in Alaska, honoring specifically Alaska storytellers. Recognizing the power of storytelling, which Adam so admired, both from Indigenous and Alaskans of all type. So before announcing tonight's award, I just want to tell you a little bit about the process that we went through to get to this evening, which we're so excited to have Laura announce the inaugural Storytelling Award. I think it was last spring, late spring, May, June. Some of us gathered together from the board of Laura and son Jacob to consider what this award would be, what would most embody Adam's passion for the Alaska and the Arctic in particular. And we came up with this storytelling idea, and everybody was super enthusiastic about it. So we said, yes, yes. And then we thought, how do we do that? And how do we do that from June to announce it tonight? And you're all here to witness it, which is so awesome. And Chris, so I want to first thank two people, Chris Kolton with AWL, you know him, wonderful development guy, and Mayumi Sudakawa, who's here in the audience today, wonderful Seattleite, who many of you know, very seasoned arts administrator. And thank the Lord, between the two of them, they moved us through a process that was so professional, so speedy, criteria, deadlines, application language that got out in a timely fashion. And, you know, it's like the first time you do something, it's like, what if we throw a party and nobody comes? We got 25 fantastic applicants, 25 from both across Alaska and a few from who were born and raised in Alaska, and it was formative to them. So we were just thrilled. So I want to acknowledge all of the applicants. People, you know, put their heart and souls into those applications. It's always really hard to choose. And also want to acknowledge the wonderful application grants committee that helped with that. A number of hours went into that process, all of it incredibly rewarding. So thank you all that are in the audience as well. So thanks to all of the applicants, but tonight we're going to shine a light on the inaugural winner of the Adam Kolton Storytelling Award. And to do that, I want to call Laura up to the stage.
Good evening, and thank you, Ellen, for those kind remarks. I'm so honored to be here this evening, and I'm joined remotely by my sons, Jacob, who, as Ellen mentioned, served on the selection committee, and Sam, who was an intern in the league office over the summer. I'm also joined via Zoom by Adam's parents, Carol and Chet, my mom and brother, and by Adam's sister, Lisa, who is here in person, along with Adam's childhood friend, Neil. Our entire family is committed to continue the work that Adam cared so deeply and passionate about. I'd like to thank all those who contributed to the Memorial Fund and to the staff and board for coming up with the idea of the Adam Kolton Alaska Storytelling Grant, A special shout out to Kristen, Andy, and Chris for your extremely helpful and patience over the last year and a half. There is no better way to capture the essence of Adam than through this grant, because at his core, he was a storyteller. Whether it was telling our boys about the summer he spent in Yellowstone during college, or regaling the Cub Scouts on their annual camping trip with tales of his adventures in Alaska and his unintended meetups with a few bears, he always had a story. Of course, every story he told always came back to his favorite topic, the refuge. Whether you were a neighbor, a casual acquaintance, or a member of Congress, you knew how much he cared about this wild land. He loved to share stories about his adventures in the refuge, the breathtaking landscapes, and the incredible people he met there. And in typical Adam fashion, he would start out very softly. And as the story built, he would become more animated and wave his arms and raise his voice. And by the end of the story, you just wanted to say, I get it, I'm with you, calm down. He was that good. It is through this grant that we hope to enable others to tell their stories and make an impact on the world as Adam did. And I am so pleased to have the honor tonight of announcing the inaugural recipient of the Adam Kolton Alaska Storytelling Grant. And as Ellen said, there were many solid and compelling applicants, but one applicant stood out among them all, and that is Polly Andrews, a Chupik from Shivak. Polly combines ancient and contemporary story, song, drum, and spoken word to showcase the unique values and strengths of Alaska's Native people. She intends to use the grant to help others tell their stories through workshops with youth in the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Polly also participated in the Alaska Wilderness Geography of Hope series in April of 2021 and shared the story of the boy who lived with seals. I had the privilege of calling Polly late last week and informing her that she had been selected. And by the end of our call, her magical voice brought a smile to my face. Please join me in congratulating Polly. And I'm pleased that you will get to hear from her directly via Zoom. Thank you.
Hi. Waka huinga na piriuk kasatun atcha pali jupiugo ilanka chufagamiungud koyana tangshumchi. And what I shared with you all was my Chupik name is Napiriuk, which means to sharpen, and my English name is Polly. I'm Chupik from the village of Chivak, which is on the Bering Sea coast in southwest Alaska, tucked right by where the Kuskokwim and the Yukon River empty out into the Bering Sea. And first, I want to really express gratitude for being selected for the Adam Kolton Alaska Storytelling Grant, expressing my thank you first to Adam's wife, Laura, and Adam's family, while also acknowledging the Alaska Wilderness League, an organization which I know that Adam Kolton poured years of his own voice, leadership, and vision into. And before I share how I learned about this opportunity, I want to introduce a little bit more of myself. I grew up in the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta region of Alaska, and I spent my early childhood years being raised by my grandparents and aunties who raised my twin sister and I on the vast tundra of our region on the winding rivers of the Kuskokwim, where we spent weeks and months living and moving with the seasons in order to, subsist and gather and be with the land and be on the land. And we spent weeks on the tundra picking berries together. We would spend months on the river drift netting for salmon fish. All the while, I heard and listened to the stories of my aunties and grandparents, which poured that wisdom and that knowledge and that love into all of us little grandchildren. It was a rich, beautiful way to grow up like that. And in 1991, I met my father when he flew his Cessna 170 into our tiny village and introduced himself as my father. And many of you might know him. His name is Roger Kay. And he worked alongside lots of wilderness advocacy as well. And when we met Dad, we hopped into his little Cessna 170 and he flew us to the city of Fairbanks in interior Alaska, where he taught my sister and I a different lens and a different way of looking at and experiencing the wilderness. He taught us what it meant to climb a mountain in the gates of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and what it felt like to stand at the top of that mountain with a view that stretched hundreds of miles and to wonder if you were the first person who had ever been up there. And he caused our little minds and encouraged our little minds to be curious about that. And with that grew an appreciation for places of wildness. So I would say that I was very, very fortunate to grow up with a foot in both worlds. And since then, I've discovered the beauty of what it means to be a voice and a song and a storyteller in between both those worlds. So with this opportunity, I plan to continue sharing story, song, and dance and Alaska Native cultural values in ways that contribute to the healing of others. And I also want to tell you a little bit about how I heard about this story grant opportunity. And, for a number of years, since 2014, I had been among a group of Alaska Native storytellers who were invited to share our stories and experiences as a part of an Alaska Native relations trainings held by the Fish and Wildlife Service. And these were trainings that helped state, government, and wilderness employees better understand the lives and the values of Alaska Native people. And what I came to realize through that experience was how valuable it is for the story of Alaska Native people to be known and for our voices to be known. You see, when stories are told, something magic happens in the room. Stories are a form of heart reflection, which builds human connection, which we know leads us to a place of better relationships and trust and the deeper understanding of the human values which connect all of us. And I came to realize that within those ancient stories I told, and through those ancient stories of old, all of us, we were all once this way. No matter what tribe or culture or background we originate from, we all had gathered around fire. We all once communed with the environment in ways that were sacred. We all once walked lovingly and gently on the earth. So more than anything, the power of story is what weaves all of us together. And I believe that Adam Kolton knew that, and he felt that. And through his memory, I get to help walk out that power of story. And I wanted to close by sharing a song with everyone. One of the things that I love to do, one of the ways that Native people express oratory and story is through the value of traditional song. This is a Yupik song. It's called Tlavut, which means our world. And the motions go like this. It means our world, outside and inside. The weather constantly changes, but the land remains the same. And in verse 1, it says, the cold weather spirit down here, it brings barrenness across the land. But the warm weather spirit up here returns and it creates life and brings life. And this song is composed by the father of my children, Asi Kayagayok from Chafornik, Alaska. And as I sing this song, I would like to dedicate this song to the memory of Adam Kolton. Shavu Oyana Chaknak for this opportunity.
What a wholesome experience. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you to the Kolton family and for the whole board to help us figure out this award. I can't think of a more amazing experience than a recipient. Got a little teary-eyed watching this. Thank you for you coming out tonight, those online out there, and for you to come here tonight in person. I know everyone's got busy lives, but the fact that you keep showing up, that you care about the Arctic, and the fight is still here. We have a lot of fighting to do. And where I come from as a Viking, fighting means something else. We're doing a good fight, and we're fighting with words. We're fighting with real science, and we're fighting with the people whose lands we are helping to protect. So I'm deeply grateful for you to be here tonight. And thank you again for this award. Congratulations to Polly. Congratulations to Patagonia. Patagonia, I have to say, I grew up climbing. I started climbing when I was 11. And I just went with Yvonne to visit Patagonia in Ventura. And I felt old for the first time maybe in my life, where Yvonne Chouinard had this museum of old climbing gear in a wall, and I had every piece of those in my own climbing arsenal at home, and I feel like, oh boy. So Patagonia being a strong storyteller too, and then Polly and the Adam Kolton Storytelling Award is, I can't think of a more fitting combination for tonight. And again, please help the fight if you want to get engaged by emailing or calling me or our organization. You can reach me at peter@alaskawild.org. You can find my cell phone number online. Call me, text me, email us as an organization. If you want to share your knowledge, your concerns, help us by donating funds to our organization or our partners, please stay in touch with us. And tonight, any donation you give will go to the Adam Kolton Memorial Fund and will be distributed to all the work we do at AWL. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and let's talk more after this. Thank you.